Hi, good afternoon. Right, to start with, I thought we'll go through the basics of how the network's laid out and sort of where the feed comes in and how it's spread out throughout the Cybermoor network. So over on the far right there, you can't read it too clearly, we have the Prudhoe Fire Station, which is linked into the Northumberland network. So that's where our internet feed comes through. Then over a microwave link about 14 kilometres, it goes across to a farm in Kearsley. At that point, cheers. So up there at Kearsley there, we break off there for a small network there for the farm that has the, the mast on the land, just to keep them happy mainly. And then off there also have a Matton Hall, which is going to provide internet to people staying in the rooms and using the courses. Then there's about a 40-kilometre stretch down there to the top of Mount Hooley. And that's sort of the nexus for the Cybermoor network where the feed goes out to all the other networks. So it goes off there towards Slaggyford, there's Garrigill down here, and of course there's Alston sitting down there, which is the largest network running off Mount Hooley. We've also got Carshield there, which at the minute is only running off just a standard BT line. But we're in the process of getting another wireless connection across to Mount Hooley to provide it with a faster connection into the rest. There's just a slightly more zoomed up picture of the surroundings of Mount Hooley. So you can sort of see the way that the network's laid out. So how it falls down there into SKS mainly, which is the school just up the road. And then from there often breaks out into all these sublinks. So each of those points there is an access point to a bridge. So that's how it spreads itself out there. And there again, just a slightly closer one there of Alston. So you can get a good idea of what's linked to what and how occasionally when you're in a place like here where there's lots of hills and obstructions, how often you have to bounce it off a couple of bridges or access points to get around to the houses that are obscured.
How far is the farthest of those sublinks?
What's that, sorry?
How far is the farthest of those, the longest of those sublinks?
The sublinks, I think it's probably going to be the one from High Park across the Middle Fell. I think that one's about 3 kilometres or so. But again, it depends on the wireless equipment. Some equipment can get much longer lengths for. And of course, the longer you go, often it slows down the link. So you try to keep the connections as close together as possible. Right, for the actual management of the network, we use a system that's developed by a company called Azatel, which are based in Canada and Ireland and a few other places. So what they basically are, an OSS platform. So it basically allows you to give out a service. So it sort of has the whole package of everything that makes up what you need to manage a network. Because there are lots of different ways you can manage a network. You can, build your own network management system up from scratch. You can, pull together and bolt together different things that are out there. Or you can go for just, an all-in-one system, which is what we decided to do here, mainly for support and convenience. So it falls under the normal things like network management, service delivery and fulfillment, service assurance, customer care, and the most important, billing. So the actual system is broken down into 2 sections. You've got the hardware unit, which they call the WIBs, which is a WISP in a box. So an acronym with an acronym there. So a wireless ISP in a box. So that's the actual hardware router that sits at the centre of each of those subnetworks. So there's one sitting in the centre of Alston, Slaggyford, and so on and so forth. And then all the actual management of those is done through a web panel, which is hosted up in a centralised network operations centre, hosted by Azatel themselves. So you use that to sort of configure units, add customers, and so on, and then it pushes all the data to the routing units, which then act as the physical gatekeeper that lets people on the network, lets them pass traffic, limits the bandwidth, and so on. So just to go into some of those parts of the OSS model, there's the service delivery and fulfillment, so it's the inventory management. So each piece of network infrastructure is added into the system, along with its, serial numbers, MAC addresses, IP addresses, locations, everything like that. So it's all maintained in a big central store. And then that's then assigned to, say, a customer. If a potential customer comes in, you then can just press a button and it just allocates an unused client unit to that customer, sets it all up, and they can just connect straight up. And again, with the IP pools, you sort of pre-configure the pools of IPs that you can make available. And then all you've got to do when you get a customer is just press the button like that, for example, generate IP address, gives them a functional IP, locks them into that access point, and they're off. Next, they've got the service assurance, and then it's down to the bandwidth management, which is one of the biggest hurdles for something like this, where you've got a very limited amount of bandwidth that you've got to somehow make stretch over hundreds of people in some cases. So there are lots of different ways. If you've got a very small network, often you don't need to bother. You know, 2 or 3 people, you can just let them browse as they can do. Once you get a bit larger, you can do things like limit the customers, so each customer can only have so much of the bandwidth. But once you get past a certain level, then if everyone's clamoring for that limited bandwidth, some people are going to get lots, some are going to get none, and people just jumping in between the two. So what the Azatel system works as, it works in a bucket system. So you create lots of sub-buckets within the system, which are then given like so you can have like a 1 meg bucket and you have a few of those. And it works with a contention system. So you'd add, say, 5 people to that bucket. So it means if one of those persons is just downloading, they'll get the full 1 meg. But as soon as other people start using it, they'll just all be taken out that small pool. So it's similar to how BT has usually a 50-to-1 contention ratio for like the 8 meg services and the like. So it allows you to, you know, take a small amount of bandwidth. Say 4 meg might be the most you can get into that point. And you might be able to split that between everyone quite fairly and no one won't get anything. Fault management. Obviously, if something goes wrong with the network, you don't want the customers to be the first ones to know something's gone wrong. So it's got a database system for all the things that you add into the system. And it tracks whether they're online, offline, how long they're being off for, which customer's been affected by that, and so on. So again, it's quite nicely linked into your Google Earth there, so you can see the actual location of the points. So, for example, that location there, Turnings Farm and Garrygill, has got 4 units there, and they're all okay. So there's nothing wrong there. And obviously, if something fails, an email comes through straight away telling you what's failed, why it's failed, and you've got to do something about it. Right, next is the customer management and care. So it's got a full CMS system in it. So you have, you know, the customer's address, details, name, contact details, all the standard stuff. And so you can keep track of exactly who's in your system. The way the system works as for the payment is you have products. So you build up a product. So you say that obviously just having the broadband will be a product, or you might have you can sell them, you know, wireless units, you can sell them routers. So that's all built into here. So you can see what they've bought, what's a recurring payment, and so on. And also in there, you can load in the payment details and invoices. The invoices are generated automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. And payment details are things like put bank the details in if they're a direct debit, then it just comes straight out. Or you can have credit cards, and then they can log into a panel and just pay it off themselves. And also, you can track all the network usage. So it monitors all the download and upload between the client and the access points. It monitors it. So there, for example, you can see that's the last 24 hours. If you go through there, you can see the last week, last month, last year. So you can see any trends and see if anyone's abusing the network, and if so, you can, you know, move them to your own bucket or just address them. Right, the billing part. As I mentioned, you've got a whole range of products that you add into the customers that are all user-definable. You've got the recurring payments, so things like the monthly broadband, which is set up to be £15, and every month it'll invoice them for it all by itself. Installation charges, so you can do like one-offs, so one-off charges for equipment or install time. And also quite a useful thing is you can set up negative products. So for example, if you want to have it so the first 3 months are half price, you can add in a product there that lasts for 3 months, so it recurs all by itself, and after 3 months stops. So you can have, you know, minus £10, so it knocks £10 off every month. So that's what that one is. Usage allowance, if you so desire, you can have it so each user only gets so much bandwidth. And then once they hit that bandwidth, then one of these overage ones kicks in. So if, say, you allowed everyone to have 10 gig, once they hit that 10 gig, you can either throttle them down. So if they're on 1 meg, you might drop them down to a 128 kilobit connection or so. You can charge them extra, so you could say for every gig they go beyond that, it costs them £1. Or you can disconnect them completely. Say you've had your lot, that's it.
Can you have different roles for different customers?
Yes, yes, you can. Automated invoicing, which I mentioned before, it just does it all by itself, and it either generates them and sends them to the operator, or if they're provided, email addresses, it can just send them straight through. And then just direct debits and payments. Right, there's For remote administration, it's a fantastic system because for managing all the customers and everything like that, it's all centrally done on the web, so you can do it from anywhere in the world. And once you've done your changes, you just press a button and it's off and all committed to the network. And they've got quite a smart system set up, whereas every WIB, every hardware unit out in the network, maintains a permanent secure VPN tunnel with their central operating center. So basically that can see then all that. That's how it keeps its monitoring going and the like. But what you can do is, using a secure VPN, you can dial into that operating system itself. And then by doing that, you can access any piece of equipment on any of the networks. So you can log directly into any web panels, you can telnet to any unit, SSH if that's the case. So it's as if you're plugged directly into each of the networks, which is a godsend. So you can just get in, restart a unit if it's playing up, and so on and so forth. Right, that's it for the presentation. Any questions from anyone?
Have you heard about the Cumbria Alert system that Cumbria County Council have been looking into?
I haven't, no.
It might tie into efficient communication of invoices, billing, and all the rest of it.
Right, I'll have a word with you later then. Yes, sir.
Is it kind of like a white label product? So the billing, for example, would that be branded, in this case, Cybermoor?
Yes.
As opposed to Azotel?
Yes, that,
So the customer is seeing something branded Cybermoor.
yes, that's the case,
Maybe
yes.
some small print at the bottom saying
Powered by Azotel, yeah. One thing I forgot to mention is each customer has their own user panel that they can actually log into themselves. So you can give them an address and the sort of a username and a password, and they can go in there, they can see how much bandwidth they've got left, what product they're on, they can change themselves to a different product, update the banking details, pay credit card payments. Of course, all these things you can disable, so if you don't want them changing any details, you can turn that part off. But it just gives them the ability to pretty much change anything to do with their account.
Do customers have to leave things on, or if you're in the bucket with somebody else, do you have to, what happens, for example, if I have a power outage, and does it affect other people?
No, it wouldn't, not at all. All the bucket really is sort of like a theoretical lump of bandwidth. So say if you've got a 4 meg pipe coming in, you might have 10 megs worth of buckets set up. And so if every bucket's filled, it sort of squashes them all down proportionately. So all it really does is provides a level of contention. So a lot of the time, if it's just standard browsing, everyone looks like they're getting the full thing, just like you do off BT. Whereas if people are using it heavily, then obviously everyone will start to see slightly smaller amounts. And since it's all tracked and managed, you can see if one bucket's flatlined at the top all the time. You can drill down, find out who's saturated it, move them somewhere else so they're not affecting anyone else, or to get in touch and say you've got to stop doing what you're doing, or you can address it however you feel right.
Your diagram of the buckets showed a group of users on one bucket and the other bucket's empty. I'm assuming that's not the way to go. You would start off by distributing them.
Yes, yes.
And then
That was just me, just simplifying it. So you'd probably think of how many people you'd have initially, and you just add one to each bucket, as you said, and just work it up. So you don't have one bucket with one person getting 4 meg all the time, and one person in with 20 other people getting a slice of it.
How much does it cost?
As the WIB system, I think the first one is around 3,000 and odd euros. So that's just for the hardware unit. And then there's a small payment per month per customer, and that's to cover the actual the billing system part of it.
What a small one.
Small, I think.
It's €1 per person per month. What Matthew said, first one that you buy is 3,600, I seem to remember, and thereafter they're either 1,300 or 1,500 euros, which you get out of Ireland. So depending how many WIBs you want, they drop in price. They don't keep getting cheaper. There's so much for the first one, and then each one after that's the same price. But irrespective, you then pay €1 per customer per month for the people connected on the network.
And I've got to say, Azotel are fantastic with the support as well. They tend to just provide the support for nothing if you're just setting yourself up originally. So, they get back to you in a matter of minutes, and they're very handy. And also, if, for example, you've already got an existing network with, 100 people in it, if you can just export that into a set of, CSV files, you can just import them all straight in and be ready to go from the off. which was a lifesaver for when we actually brought these into the Cybermoor network, because there was 350 odd people. So if you had to add them in one at a time, that would take forever.
Well, what's your relationship to Cybermoor?
We're just brought in and we work with them for the actual network administration, for setting up access points, for maintaining it. Yes, sir.
What wireless manufacturer equipment is supported by?
It's agnostic, so any wireless stuff would work. They have a range of them that give a bit more SNMP data, but if you submit the MIBs to them and discuss it, then they can add in extra monitoring features for each different manufacturer. But at the minute, there's support for, I think they've got some Motorola stuff in there, they've got some MikroTik units, but in general, just stick with the generic one and everything just works. Anything else? Right then, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.